Hello everyone, this is Rick. Welcome to an episode where we will discuss how the Britishers expanded their territory after the conquest of Bengal. We are going to see how they conquered other provinces like the Punjab province, the Mysore province, and the Sikh province mainly. So, we are going to see how the Anglo-Maratha wars were fought, what were the policies introduced by the Britishers in order to get hold of Indian territories, and what are the treacheries they have done here in order to take control over the whole of Indian subcontinent. So please carry a notebook with you. Also, the last part of this episode contains the questions and answers which will help you in your exams. So follow and note down the important points. Introduction. So Warren Hastings was appointed as the governor of Bengal and brought Bengal under direct control of the company. If you have seen our last video, then you will know that there was something called a dual form of government. So that was abolished and Warren Hastings totally took control of the Bengal government. In 1773, Calcutta was made the capital of British possessions and headquarters of the Governor General. So, Calcutta was the headquarter of the British colony in India. All the things that the Britishers decided to do was decided from Calcutta because it was here where the Governor General resided. Company had direct control over Bengal, Madras and Bombay presidencies. So these were the three parts of India where company had direct control. That is Madras, Bombay and Bengal presidencies. The British aimed to expand their power across India. So their aim was not to be satisfied with the conquest of Bengal only. They aimed to expand their power all over India. In Deccan, Marathas, Nizams of Hyderabad and rulers of Mysore were powerful. So with the conquest of Bengal, there arose different other powers who were also as powerful or sometimes more powerful than Bengal. They were the Marathas, Nizams of Hyderabad, and rulers of Mysore. The British sought to eliminate rivals one by one. So, what was the strategy of the Britishers? To take over the whole of India one by one, one at a time. So, the ultimate aim was to establish an all India empire. So, the ultimate aim of the Britisher was to get full control over the whole of Indian subcontinent. Subsidiary alliance. Now, what is subsidiary alliance? This was a procedure introduced by the Britishers in order to get control of a province. So, the subsidiary alliance system was perfected by Lord Wellesley to subjugate Indian powers without wars. So, this was a policy through which the Britishers could take over the territory without any fight. It expanded the British territory and influence. So obviously the main purpose was to expand the British influence. Indian rulers had to allow permanent placement of British forces in his territory. So permanently there will be a part of British army in the territory of an Indian ruler. That is non-negotiable under subsidiary alliance. Rulers had to pay for the troops in cash or kind. Sometimes territory was ceded. So the ruler had to pay for the expense of maintaining this troop in his own territory. Whose troop? The troop of the Britishers. And sometimes, in order to support the expense of this army, territory was ceded into the British Empire. A British official called a resident was stationed in the ruler's court. So a British citizen will also stay in the ruler's court, and the duty of this resident was to give all the information to the governor general. Ruler could not employ Europeans other than British and had to dismiss existing ones. So once a ruler comes under subsidiary alliance, they were not allowed to employ any other Europeans under their control. They were not allowed to seek help from any other powers other than the Britishers. And even if they already did employ some other European, they had to dismiss the existing ones. Ruler could not ally with or declare war against others without British permission. So the foreign policy of a kingdom was also being controlled by the Britishers. Ruler acknowledged the British company as the paramount power. So the ruler will have to agree to the fact that the paramount power or the highest level of power is the British company. That was subsidiary alliance. Now we will see the provisions of subsidiary alliance. That is the effect of subsidiary alliance. What happened because of this subsidiary alliance? The system was highly advantageous to the British. So with this system, the Britishers could control almost every aspect, the major aspect like military and foreign policy of a kingdom. Large armies were maintained at the expense of Indian rulers. So large armies were maintained, and who paid for those maintenance? The Indian rulers. The British acquired valuable territories as subsidiary payment, expanding their empire and resources. So, in order to pay for this army, the emperors or the kings sometimes used to give a portion of their territory to the Britisher. And so, Britishers acquired valuable territories as subsidiary payment. Thus, their empire and resources both expanded multifold. European rivals, especially the French, were excluded from Indian states. So the French had no power over the Indian states because, according to subsidiary alliance, a king, if he goes under subsidiary alliance of the British company, then he would have to dismiss all the existing European interference in his court. British controlled foreign policy of the subsidiary states. So the foreign policy of the subsidiary states, with whom the kingdom will be friends with whom they will have and war, everything was being controlled by the Britishers. Expanded British influence across India through indirect control. So thus through indirect control, Britishers became overlord across India. Increase in resources strengthened the British economically and militarily. Disadvantage for the Indian rulers. So how did this system affect the Indians? And the effect was very negative for the Indian rulers. That is disadvantage for the Indian rulers. So Indian rulers lost real independence and became dependent on the British. So Indian rulers lost all of their independence and they became totally on the hands, on the mercy of the Britishers. Rulers turned into virtual puppets in the British hand. So rulers did not have any military power, neither they had any foreign policy. Thus, rulers were basically puppets under the British control. Huge payments for troops drained resources, leading to poverty and state decay. So huge payments had to be secured for the maintenance of troops, and that was very costly. So resources were being drained, and the money which was supposed to be used for the welfare of the people was being used for the maintenance of British soldiers in a king's territory. British annexed kingdoms citing misgovernance after collapse. So because of all these reasons, it was very difficult for the king to maintain the kingdom, and so sometimes administration collapsed. When an administration collapsed because of subsidiary alliance, that time the Britishers would come as a savior and say to the people that, see, your king is not able to govern you properly, so I am taking over. So Britishers annexed kingdoms citing misgovernance. Protection from British made rulers lose people's trust. Revolts stopped. So An Indian farmer or an Indian commoner will never trust a ruler who is himself at the mercy of the Britishers. Thus, the rulers lost trust of the people. Oppressive rule led to widespread suffering among the populace. And because of this oppressive rule, why oppressive? Because the rulers couldn't do anything for the welfare of the people. All the money went to maintenance of troops. So, this oppressive rule led to widespread suffering among the common people. Now, who were the states which came under subsidiary alliance? Hyderabad, they came under subsidiary alliance in 1798 and 1800. Tanjore in 1799, Awadh in 1801, Gwalior in 1804, Indore in 1817, Udaipur, Jaipur, and Jodhpur in 1818. So these were the states which came under British control. Subjugation of the Marathas. So after Bengal, Marathas were very important because their land was also very fertile and militarily Marathas were very strong. So how did the Britishers subjugate the Marathas? Post Panipat decline. After 1761, Maratha Empire split into five independent states. Peshwa's power declined. So after the Panipat, the third Panipat war, the Maratha Empire split into many independent states, and the Peshwa means one who was like the prime minister of the Maratha Empire, the virtual ruler. His power declined after 1761. Now, what were the centers? What were the power centers of the Maratha empire? Gaikwad from Baroda, Bhosle from Nagpur, Sindhia from Gwalior, Holkar from Indore, and Peshwa from Pune. So these were all the important families which controlled the Maratha empire. British saw Marathas as main obstacle and sought to weaken them. So the Britishers saw the Marathas after Bengal, the Marathas were the most powerful, and so it was very much necessary for the Britishers to weaken the Maratha Empire. It took 43 years, 1775 to 1818, and three wars to subjugate the Marathas. So this long drawn struggle against the Marathas was very much expensive for the Britishers because it took a lot of time and Britishers had to fight three wars to get total control of the Marathas. Despite decline, Marathas recovered much of their power after Panipat. So even though Marathas were on a decline, but still they could get their original power back, their original status back after the Panipat War in 1761. Rivalries and conflicts weakened Maratha unity over time. The main problem with the Marathas were there was a lot of internal conflict, and thus it internally weakened a lot. First Anglo-Maratha War, 1775 to 1782. What were the causes? So this war was fought for a period of 7 years. Now, what led to the fight? Succession dispute. After Madhav Rao's death, his brother Narayan Rao became the Peshwa in 1773. So, after the death of Madhav Rao, his brother was there, Narayan Rao, who became the Peshwa. Narayan Rao was murdered by his uncle Raghunath Rao. So, there was another person who was his uncle. He murdered Narayan Rao. Dispute arose between supporters of infant Peshwa Madhav Rao II and Raghunath Rao. So now who will become the Peshwa? Because Narayan Rao's son was infant. His name was Madhav Rao II. And there was another person, Rao, who was the uncle of Narayan Rao. So who will become the Peshwa now? He approached the British. Raghunath Rao approached the British at Bombay for assistance. So Raghunath Rao called upon foreign powers to solve the dispute. British agreed in hope of gaining territory and political influence in Maratha affairs. So Britishers agreed because they were anyway trying to weaken the Maratha dynasty. So what were the events of the war and how was the result? So role of Nana Fadnavis, guardian of infant Peshwa, united Maratha chiefs to defeat the British at Bombay. So at Bombay the Britishers were defeated. The supporters of Raghunath Rao was defeated because the infant Peshwa Madhav Rao II had a very efficient guardian whose name was Nana Fadnavis. Warren Hastings sent troops from Bengal to recover the position. So Warren Hastings sent help from Bengal because Bengal was already under British control. So from Bengal he sent troops to help recover the position. Conflict lasted for 7 years. So this fight went on for 7 years. Ended the war in 1782 with the Treaty of Salbai. British recognized Madhav Rao II as the Peshwa. So Britishers recognized Madhav Rao II as the Peshwa. They withdrew their support from Raghunath Rao, and that was all settled in the Treaty of Salbai. Raghunath Rao was pensioned. He was granted a pension and removed from politics. So Raghunath Rao received a retirement fee and was told not to interfere in Maratha politics anymore. The treaty brought 20 years peace between the Marathas and the British. So for the next 20 years there was peace among the Marathas and the Britishers. Second Anglo-Maratha War 1803 to 1805. So this was a war of 2 years. Causes, events and results. Let us see. So weak leadership was the cause because after Madhav Rao's two's death in 1796, Baji Rao II became the Peshwa, weak and indecisive. So Baji Rao II became the Peshwa, but Baji Rao II was not at all powerful. Baji Rao I was very powerful ruler in the Maratha Peshwa history, but Baji Rao II was not at all that powerful. He was weak and indecisive. The death of Nana Fadnavis led to rivalries among chiefs. So, with the death of a strong personality like Nana Fadnavis, once again there was internal conflict among the Marathas. In 1802, Baji Rao II signed a treaty at Masse with British for protection. So Baji Rao II decided to sign a treaty with the Britishers for protection in 1802. Sindhia and Vosley declared war in 1803. So the Peshwa himself sided with the Britishers, and that was not at all liked by the Sindhia and Vosley families. Therefore, they declared war in 1803. Both accepted subsidiary alliance, ceded large territories. So both Scindias and Vosles were defeated and they had to accept subsidiary alliance, and also they had to give away a large part of their territory to the Britishers. Holkar fought, but Wellesley was recalled due to high wars costs. So Holkars were still fighting, but Lord Wellesley was spending a lot of money on these Anglo-Maratha wars, so he was called back. Third Anglo-Maratha War 1817 to 1818. Causes, events and results. So this was the last war between the Marathas and the Britishers, and it resulted in complete control of the Maratha territory by the Britishers. So cause, resentment of control. Baji Rao II resented British residents' control. So Baji Rao II, even though he asked for the support of British for protection, he was right now not liking the control of the British resident. Who is a resident? According to Subsidiary Alliance, a person of the company will stay in the court of the king. So that person used to control everything, and Baji Rao too didn't like it at all. Decided to recover independence, allied with Bhosle and Holkar. So again he decided to have an alliance with Bhosle and Holkar, one who were considered to be his enemies. So the Peshwa's family, Bhosle and Holkar, again decided to fight against the Britishers. Attack on British residency. So Peshwa attacked Kirki near Pune and burned it. So Peshwa attacked the residency of the Britishers and where Britishers used to stay. So they totally burned this place called Kirki, which was near Pune. British defeated combined Maratha forces. However, by this time, Britishers have become very powerful and so they easily defeated the combined Maratha forces. Baji Rao II was deposed, exiled to Bithur with pension. So Baji Rao II was removed from politics. He was exiled to a place called Bithur where he lived with pension. His territories were annexed, Satara carved out for Pratap Singh. So Satara was the one important place of the Peshwa territories. It was carved out and given to a person called Pratap Singh. Bhosle and Holkar ceded large areas. Holkars accepted subsidiary alliance. So Bhosles and Holkars once again they had to give a large amount of their territory to the Britishers as a cost of war, as an indemnity, and Holkars accepted the subsidiary alliance of the Britishers. Then there was end of Maratha power. So Britishers became supreme power in India after the Maratha defeat. With the defeat of Marathas, Britishers became supreme power. So Bengal gone and next Marathas also gone. Subjugation of Mysore. What happened in Mysore? Mysore's challenge. Mysore was a major state in the Deccan that opposed British authority. So Mysore was one of the main states in Deccan which was totally against the Britishers. The state came into direct confrontation with the British. They were actually supporters of Napoleon and French rulers. So it was another reason because of which the territory of Mysore came into direct confrontation with the British. Haider Ali was the ruler of Mysore and a brilliant administrator. So Haider Ali was the ruler of Mysore. He was a very efficient administrator. He aimed to extend Mysore's boundaries to a maximum limit. So his aim was to expand the Mysore's territorial conquest, expanded his kingdom up to Krishna river. Then what happened? Implemented reforms and established a sound administrative system. He also did a lot for the welfare of the people. His rule united and strengthened Mysore politically and militarily. So Haider Ali was a very efficient ruler who made Mysore a very strong province in the south. Punjab. What happened in Punjab? It is very interesting to note that Marathas and Punjabs were very powerful, but because of their internal conflicts and because they couldn't unite together, they were strategically subjugated by the Britishers. So, establishment of a Sikh kingdom. If you have gone through the video on regional powers, then you will know how Maharaja Ranjit Singh founded the first Sikh kingdom in Punjab. His successors were weak and inefficient rulers. The successors of Maharaja Ranjit Singh were not at all strong and they were very inefficient administrators, unable to manage the vast kingdom effectively. So there was a lack of control. Ambitious and corrupt leaders pursued selfish interests. So the administration also became filled with corrupt leaders who had their own intentions. The kingdom suffered from internal conflict. There were huge internal strifes between different power strongholds of the Punjab kingdom. Power struggles weakened the unity of Punjab. So, unity of Punjab was hampered because of these internal strifes. The issues left Punjab vulnerable to external threats. So, because of this internal weakening, Punjab became an easy target for the foreign powers, especially the Britishers. First Anglo-Sikh War. It was fought in 1845 to 1846. Growing Sikh army power. The Sikh army became a powerful force after Ranjit Singh's death. So after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Sikh army was very powerful. Queen Mother Rani Jindan and her associates were accused of plotting against British interests. So there was a rumor that Queen Mother Rani Jindan was plotting something against the Britishers. Army could be provoked into war any time. So army was always ready for war, and that was a cause of danger for the Britishers. In 1845, Sikh army crossed Sutlej and advanced into British territory. So between Maharaja Ranjit Singh and the Britishers, there was a treaty, according to which River Sutlej was to be the border of both the territories. But in 1845, Sikh army crossed the Sutlej River. Governor General Lord Hardinge declared war on Sikhs. So that was also a reason because of which, and it was used as an excuse to declare war against the Sikh kingdom by Governor Hardinge. Sikhs were defeated and Treaty of Lahore was signed in 1846. So in this war, Sikhs were defeated and there was Treaty of Lahore in 1846. Dilip Singh made ruler. Lahore placed under British control. British stationed a force in Lahore. So Dilip Singh, the young son of Ranjit Singh, became the ruler and Lahore was placed under British control. Means Lahore had to accept subsidiary alliance. And so a British force, a part of British troop, was also stationed in Lahore. Second Anglo-Sikh War, 1848 to 49. What happened here? So, continued British control angered Sikh chiefs. Revolt erupted in Multan. So, in Multan, which is presently in Pakistan, there was a revolt because the Sikh chiefs were not liking Britishers as they were absolutely controlling all the aspects of their kingdom. So discontent spread to other areas in Punjab. Other areas in Punjab also revolted against the Britishers. British forces fought decisive battles at Chilianwala and Gujarat. So these were places where Britishers fought against the Sikh Empire. Sikh forces were completely defeated. However, despite their anger, the Sikhs had to be defeated. They were completely erased. Their political power was completely gone. Punjab annexed to the British Empire in 1849. So in 1849, Punjab was taken over by the British Empire. Dilip Singh pensioned off and sent to England. Dilip Singh was very young. He was given a pension and sent to England, where he lived under the care of Queen Victoria, and he almost became an Westerner in habits and culture. Annexation completed British control over northwest India. So whole of northwest India was totally under the Britishers after the Second Anglo-Sikh War. Doctrine of Lapse. Now, this was another policy introduced by the Britishers in order to get control of Indian territory. So, policy introduction. It was introduced by Lord Dalhousie to expand British territory. What was the policy? Dependent states without male heirs were annexed. So, if any state is under subsidiary alliance and naturally the king does not have a natural born son, then adopted son will not be allowed to govern over the state. The state will go under complete British control. That was the policy of doctrine of lapse. And through this policy, major states which were annexed are Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jhansi, and Nagpur. All these stories are very famous of how the adopted son was not at all accepted by the Britishers, while they fought wars against the Britishers mainly in 1857. Families were pensioned off and territories were annexed. So families did not have any power, they were pensioned off, and all the territories under the king came under British control, caused widespread resentment among the Indians. So this was not at all liked by the Indians. Not only the rulers, the common people also hated this process. Became a major cause for the uprising in 1857. In 1857, a great war was fought, which is considered to be the first war of independence by the Indians. And that was this doctrine of lapse was one of the biggest cause behind the anger of the Indians in 1857, applied to titles and pensions of subordinate rulers without heirs. So, if any subordinate ruler did not have any natural born son, then that ruler's kingdom will go under British control. India in 1856. Now, what was the situation of India just before the revolt of 1857? So, we will see how was India in 1856. By 1856, the East India Company controlled all of India. So, East India Company was controlling the whole India by 1856, directly somewhere or indirectly through subsidiary alliance. British eliminated all rivals and established supremacy. So there were no other European powers which were in competition with the Britishers. They eliminated all other rivals in India, and also foreign powers like Portuguese, Dutch, French, all were gone. So Britishers were the paramount power in India, exploited the lack of unity among Indian rulers. Indian rulers were always fighting among each other. So that was an excuse which was very well used by the Britishers. Indian states lacked organized, efficient administration. Indian states were also not in a good situation to administer their territories. Superior political, economic, and military resources. Since Indians were not at all in a good situation, the military power of the Indians also declined a lot. Hence, Britishers were superior in political, economic, and military strategies. British naval power ensured control over trade and territories. The Indian rulers were not at all experts in navy. Marathas were very expert, but by this time, because of internal conflict between the Marathas also were under British control. Other parts of India like Punjab, Bengal, Mysore, or Hyderabad did not have any navy power as such. Company rule transformed British power in India into a vast empire. So now we will see through the question and answers, which will not only help you in your exams but will help you to understand this chapter in a much better way. Give a brief introduction of Haider Ali. Haider Ali, the ruler of Mysore, was a brilliant administrator. He was an ambitious ruler and wanted to take the boundary of Mysore to maximum limit. He expanded his kingdom up to Krishna River. He strengthened his position by introducing various reforms and setting up a sound administrative system. His kingdom was united and strong. When did the subjugation of Mysore prove very beneficial to the British? The subjugation of Mysore proved very beneficial to the British as it removed major power in the south that had challenged their authority. This allowed the British to expand their territory and influence in the Deccan without facing a strong southern rival. State the causes and results of the First and Second Anglo-Maratha Wars. Causes of the First Anglo-Maratha War, 1775 to 1782. A succession dispute arose after the death of Madhav Rao I between infant Peshwa Madhav Rao II and Raghunath Rao. Raghunath Rao sought British help in return for territorial and political concessions. Results ended with the Treaty of Salbai in 1782. British recognized Madhav Rao II as Peshwa and Raghunath Rao was pensioned off. It ensured 20 years of peace. Causes of Second Anglo-Maratha War: weak leadership of Peshwa Baji Rao II, disunity among chiefs after Nana Fadnavis's death, and Subsidiary Treaty of Basse in 1802. Results: Marathas were defeated, Scindia and Bhosle accepted subsidiary alliance and ceded large territories. Holkars resisted, but British retained dominance. What were the results of the Third Anglo-Maratha War? Baji Rao too was deposed and exiled to Bithur as a pensioner of the British. His territories were annexed. A small state, Satara, was carved out from his territories, and Pratap Singh, a descendant of Shivaji, was placed on the throne. Bhosle and Holkar ceded large parts of their territories to the British. Holkar accepted the subsidiary alliance. Maratha power was finally extinguished. The defeat of the Marathas made British the supreme power in India. Give a brief account of the Second Anglo-Sikh War. The Second Anglo-Sikh War broke out due to continued British control and growing resentment among Sikh chiefs. Revolts began in Multan and spread to other areas in Punjab. The British fought decisive battles at Chillianwala and Gujarat, defeating the Sikhs completely. As a result, Punjab was annexed to the British Empire in 1849. Maharaja Ranjit Singh was pensioned off and sent to England. This completed British control over northwest India. What methods were used by the British to establish their supremacy in India? The British supremacy in India was established by two systems of expansion: subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse. The subsidiary alliance forced Indian rulers to accept British protection, station the British troops in their territory, and give up control over foreign affairs. The doctrine of lapse annexed states where the ruler died without a natural male heir. What do you know about subsidiary alliance? Discuss in brief. The subsidiary alliance system was perfected by Lord Wellesley to subjugate Indian powers without the cost and botheration of war. It was the most effective instrument for the expansion of the British territory and political influence. The Indian ruler had to accept permanent placement of British troops in his territory and pay for their maintenance. A British resident was placed in the court, and the ruler could not employ any European other than the British or make war or alliances without British permission. What terms and conditions did the Indian rulers have to accept for British protection under subsidiary alliance? For the protection of the Indian ruler, British forces would be permanently placed in the territory of the subsidiary state. The ruler would have to pay for their maintenance in cash or kind. Sometimes territory was ceded. A British resident was appointed at the court. The ruler could not employ any European other than the British and would dismiss those already there. He would not form alliances or declare war without British permission. He had to acknowledge the British as the paramount power. Name any three states that were under subsidiary alliance system. The three states where the subsidiary alliance system was introduced are Hyderabad in 1798 and 1800, Tanjore in 1799, and Awadh in 1801. Write a short note on the doctrine of lapse. List the Indian states where it was introduced. The doctrine of lapse was a policy of expansion adopted by Lord Dalhousie, according to which all subordinate states whose ruler died without a natural male heir would be annexed by the British. States annexed under this policy included Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jhansi, and Nagpur. This policy caused widespread resentment among Indian rulers and was a major cause of the revolt of 1857. So that was all in this video. We have seen how one by one all the major Indian states came under British influence. Starting from Bengal, which we have discussed in our last video, we have seen how the strong Marathas failed, and then we have seen Mysore and Punjab coming under the British control. So that was all for now. Please go through the question answers and support me so that I can bring brighter contents in future. Thank you for your love and support.